Hello, I'm Raul, and this is Catch Wrestling Alliance, where we keep real wrestling alive. And so I wanted to kind of talk about some interesting match that happened in One Championship just a couple days ago in Singapore, I believe it was. And also, too, we're trying out something a little different. I wanted to try maybe a different format here, so we're going to try to do some picture-in-picture stuff. I'm just going to try to improve just the overall visual quality for you guys. So anyway, back to the point. We had a match between the really popular jiu-jitsu practitioner and MMA fighter. He's been fighting for years and years in Japan, Shinya Aioki, and he had an MMA match against James Nakashima, who is an American, and he grew up, I believe, in Nebraska, and he ended up, wrestling University of Nebraska. He's also really high level, basically Division One wrestler. So that means he also he also trained with Jordan Burroughs as well. So that's the thing. So then he had a match with Shinya Aioki, who's basically known as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Even though he does MMA, he's still able to kind of tie people up and then submit them. Right? They did have in the past. They had like a grappling match between Aioki and Gary Tonnen. Ultimately, Tonnen won that one, but there was no striking involved, right? So this one has striking involved, so that's kind of one thing to take into consideration. But with that being said, Nakashima, he was trying to punch, and Aioki was able to get under those punches. And let's go ahead and show you. I want to try to do this picture-in-picture thing here. Let's see if we can make it happen for you guys. And hopefully, let's see. Okay. Okay, so punching, and then Aoki is able to get double unders and then basically take the back, right? So taking the back there, and this is actually what we would call like top ride, but you'd also see this in if you're going for what people call the twister, jiu-jitsu people call it twister now, but often it's called guillotine or wrestler's guillotine. All right, so that is actually a really good leg position to keep someone in so that you can keep the back. So you don't necessarily need to have like both hooks in or even like a body triangle to still keep that kind of position where you're kind of on the back. You're able to just stand up if you want, but you can do both there. All right, so Aoki's still on the back there. Nice, and he's going to transition. It looks like, yeah, right there, he's transitioned to the body triangle. But the thing is, Nakashima was kind of holding on to the wrist, and he was able to hang on. But so this is the other thing I want to kind of point out. You basically had Aoki doing a modified version of a rear naked choke there, and so it ended up being more of a neck crank because if you can see, or if you've noticed, Nakashima's head was turned completely to the side, right? So Aoki ended up getting him to turn this way, and then this is really different from the Conor McGregor Khabib fight, where in this match, Aoki versus Nakashima, Aoki basically punched this way and turned the head that way, right? In the Khabib match, Khabib came forward and then Conor's head was towards this way, right? And he tapped out. This is actually much less painful than this way, right? So you see how it's already just cranking my neck this way. So I believe that Nakashima was in a lot of discomfort. Yes. Yeah. So let me, Sensei Emmett. Yes, this is live. So yeah, feel free to ask questions and stuff. But let me get to it real, just in a couple minutes. All right. So I believe that Nakashima was in a lot of pain, right? And then so this was like actually more of like a neck crank submission than, than like a choke, right? So that's why I wanted to kind of talk about it, where it's like, um, this is what you say. Maybe someone can say like this more like a hybrid kind of style that Aioki has, and that was able to beat Nakashima's more of a amateur wrestling base. I do want to say that according to his bio, Nakashima did spend time studying traditional jiu-jitsu where he's from in the Midwest. So you don't want to say that like he's a complete novice, but he's definitely considered to be more of an American amateur wrestler. So that's why I kind of wanted to point it out. So his background would be that way. So, and also in his other fights, he's been able to like he was actually undefeated really until recently, right? So he's only suffered a few losses. Actually, just what these are like his two losses, if I'm not mistaken, right? So he's actually done very, very well. But what we see is like when you have someone that has more of a flexible mindset, and I guess this is kind of my point, is that if someone coming from a catch wrestling background should be a little bit more flexible in the mindset as opposed to someone, and this is completely my opinion, someone who just does the amateur wrestling and then tries to incorporate that into their like incorporate the jiu-jitsu into their style, right? So and so again, throwing punches also kind of mixes it up a little bit, so it kind of makes it a little bit more risky. And you saw that Aioki was able to get underneath those punches, get that body lock, and then set up ultimately that neck crank. That it was basically like a face lock, really. So once you get the rear naked choke position where you got their neck cranked, that is what we would call a face lock. So Aioki ended up winning by face lock, but they're probably just going to call it a rear naked choke or whatever. So in a way, I would kind of say it's like you can kind of see where someone who's incorporating some catch wrestling type of movements was able to beat a really good amateur wrestler. So hopefully Nakashima can learn from this and just improve, because he was already doing actually very, very well. I think he only has 2 losses now total. And so I'm sure they're just gonna keep him fighting in one championship, because that's kind of what they do, and that's kind of what I like about them, is like they try to really like build up all their fighters, and they try to make it so that you kind of know who they are. So that's why I know about his background. So it's not just like them saying it, or it's like they keep bringing it up, and they kind of keep introducing like all the players to the audience. And I think that's something that UFC isn't doing as much. And so then sometimes I think people don't care as much about some of the fights, and it's like there's only a few like breakout stars that are cared about. But it's like, again, even one championship isn't perfect at this, but I see them trying more often to introduce all the different fighters to the audience, and I think that's very, very important. Also, too, if you guys follow our social media, I'm trying to get more clips of all these different grapplers that we've had and compete in our tournaments, so that you guys can kind of see not only like examples of pretty good catch wrestling, but also see who these people are. So that's why sometimes I'll even have like Anthony Pachek on, and we'll do a dialogue back and forth. So that's why I'm trying to get people to know who these legit people are, and also to see the real thing. All right, yeah, keep on asking your questions, and keep on commenting. Sensei Emmett, again, so main question you wanted to ask for a while is where you can get a copy of Farmer Burns' book. Yeah, it's available online, but usually so like Sword Tune replied to you saying lessons in wrestling and physical culture. It exists on the online library archives because that was that was what Farmer Burns mailed out to people, and so that's all available online. You can also, I'm sure, yeah, it's like I ended up getting gifted a copy of, like, basically someone just printed them all out and made a paperback book, and just put that out. So someone gave that to me. I know someone who actually has all the original papers that got mailed out by Farmer Burns. So I've seen those and I've held those and I looked through those, but you don't need to look through that because they've all been photocopied and put into a book for you. Um, so don't worry about that. But yeah, that's totally fine. I don't know about the other book, the book that I usually use, the Life's Work of Farmer Burns. That one, I'm sure if you look for it, I'm sure there'd be some. Well, I think I looked for it one time. It was available for like $100, like on Amazon. Yes, I believe so. But things are always changing. I'm sure maybe if someone else had a copy, they could put it up. Yeah, maybe if I maybe I can make a photocopy. Actually, I happen to have the book right next to me. So mine is all. So this was a gift. It was given to me by someone who found it. When they're looking around all these old antique shops and stuff. So you can see mine is like torn up, like pretty bad. And this is basically how it was given to me, except for I put all the papers in there, but or like look for note taking and stuff because I don't want to write in it or anything. It's already very worn. So, but I did see that someone had some kind of copy of it. You can see some kind of copy of it online. So it's available somehow. So maybe I can, say like I used to, when I was in school, I used to work at the school's version of like a Kinko's or like a copy store, and so I ended up copying a lot of books, right? So because they're so expensive, right? So anyway, maybe I can see if I can get a copy of this. This one, this one does have. Well, what it does, and like, so it has a lot of extra things, but you also have like a lot of pictures in the back here, right? And a lot of them, actually, the majority, I believe, are in the Farmer Burns physical culture mailing. So at least picture wise, so you see here, picture wise, a lot of these pictures are just reproduced in this book that came from the stuff that Farmer Burns mailed out. So you could definitely get the majority of these pictures. There's some like personal pictures of him, like I think there's like some like a poster and stuff in here that is not in the physical culture printings, but it's really like not too much different. Yeah. I think it's stuff like this, like these kind of posters. I believe that this is kind of unique to this book, if I remember correctly. And like you'll see like Farmer Burns when he was acting in I think he was in a play. So I don't think that's in the physical culture thing. So maybe we'll kind of talk. Maybe I'll try to share more of those, at least the pictures and stuff. Yeah, maybe I'll try to share them. I'll post those like on our social media so you guys can see that. So maybe on our Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and stuff. So you guys can at least see some of these things that are unique to this book that aren't so readily available online. All right, so let's get to the next question. Raul, so this is from Sword Tune. Raul, I have heard you mention the catch wrestling fundamentals that separates catch from hybrids of amateur wrestling and BJJ. What are those fundamentals exactly? So I've often. Oh, okay. So you continue with your thing. So are they techniques or more like a way of approaching problems? Yes and yes. So there are specific techniques that are kind of characteristic of catch wrestling, and then again, the way you solve a problem. So that's why I often talk about catch wrestling, and we know it is its own style of wrestling, and so then I often refer to it or try to kind of let people, or kind of use the example of a language, right? So quite often people understand like the different Romance languages. So you have like Spanish and French and Italian, Portuguese, it's Romanian, and all that. So they're all kind of similar, right? So, but they're different, right? They're different enough so that they are their own language, right? So even though they might share similar sounds, similar grammar, and sometimes like say like me, because I can speak Spanish, often I can understand someone who's speaking Portuguese, right? It often depends on their accent or whatever, or what they're talking about specifically. Because some of the words sound so similar to Spanish that I understand what they're saying. It doesn't mean I can respond, and that's kind of one of the differences. It doesn't mean I can respond in Portuguese, but at least I know what they're saying. I can respond in Spanish, and if they can probably and they probably have that same thing going back with regards to Spanish, right? So so it's like there might be a familiarity, but they can't quite converse in that language. So hopefully that kind of makes my point a little bit more clear. So catch wrestling, again, it evolved in the northern part of England, right, in the Lancashire region. That's why it was often called Lancashire wrestling. And again, it had a real emphasis of the pin. And then it got like the submissions a little bit more incorporated into it, but it had this way of doing things. I consider it kind of like a very British way of doing things. And it wasn't just like taking things here and there. Like sometimes people, they'll ask me like, oh, did it come from all the British Navy bringing it? And it's like, well, there are different waves of immigration that actually came more from mainland Europe, that seemed to have more of an influence on the style, than just like the Navy going out and then all of a sudden coming back to then one particular county in England to develop a wrestling style. It just doesn't quite make sense. At least that experience, or that theory just doesn't. It really falls apart pretty quickly. So yeah, it was something that evolved over time, and so that's why we have in England still have different regional wrestling styles. But catch as catch can, ultimately, it does mean that you start neutral. You don't touch the person. You're not touching the person. So the other styles had a specific starting position, not catch wrestling. So you were neutral, just like matches today, like boxing matches, MMA, wrestling. You're not touching. And then when the referee blows the whistle, then you can grab the person, or you can touch each other, but there's no set way. So that's why you can catch as catch can. It's not like a lot. And then nowadays, a lot of people say, "Oh, submit them any way you can." That's not the way people were thinking back in the day. So that's why a lot of times nowadays you get this misunderstanding of catch wrestling itself, right? So you see, like I can give you the example of Greco-Roman, right? You can't really, and even judo. So modern judo, you can't grab the legs, right? And again, like Greco, also it's like upper body throws and stuff like that. So that's what separates it from other grappling styles, or that's what makes it unique. But again, catch wrestling, you could grab a leg, and quite often one of the ways people won in really early catch wrestling matches was that like they would dive in, grab the legs, and then so basically dive in, see if they could get a double, right? Not necessarily like what you see where it's like a knee over toe, right? But you actually grab and then you just basically fall over to see if you can't land on top of the person and they're pinned under you. That was what I read was like that. If you could just dive in like that, you could win a lot of matches that way without submitting them, right? But you could grab the legs, which was illegal in different styles. So that's what makes catch wrestling, again, its own style, its own unique way of doing things. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. All right, so let's get back to your response as it makes sense. I'm passably literate in French, and I can grasp more Spanish writing than I could when I only knew English. Right? Yeah, exactly. So like, so in a way, I think you're kind of so you started with the certain base, your base language, and then when you try to incorporate other languages, then in a way, it's almost kind of like someone doing different training in different styles, right? But they might still have a base language that they that shapes their worldview, right? So this would be the same idea with regards to this style, the specific style of catch as catch can wrestling or Lancashire wrestling. And then again, that's why it was often called Lancashire wrestling, because it was very unique and characteristic of something that evolved in that region. It wasn't called British wrestling or national wrestling or anything like that, because there are other wrestling styles that evolved on those islands, right? In the United Kingdom, right? Um, so there. So hopefully I think that kind of answered your question, right? So yeah, the more languages you learn, the more of a grasp you can get, but you might still have like a foundational language that you fall back to, right? So that's the catch wrestling. So I feel like it's that way for me personally. And so yeah, so that's what I try to show you on this channel as well. Big pressure jujitsu. When did chokeholds enter the style? So chokeholds were kind of a little bit of the style where, so like I said earlier, where hundreds of years ago, you'll have matches where, again, people were still trying to pin, but sometimes they were even allowing like kicks, like strikes, like punching and stuff were never really ever part of catch wrestling. But sometimes you could try to do maybe like a guillotine choke, as if someone was as they were trying to dive in and grab your legs and throw you over. But like it's actually quite early on in the 1800s. They try to standardize the style a little bit so they could kind of have it reach more people throughout England. And so that's basically when the chokes were barred. So you have people nowadays talking about like, chokes were always a part of it. It wasn't quite like that. And also, like one of the things that annoys me is like they try to misquote Frank Gotch. So again, you have to realize that humans have always been grappling and fighting like all over the world. So Frank Gotch did like a grappling tournament, and you have to know that there were several styles of grappling that were in existence in the United States at the time. So Frank, he wanted to do a match and he won a tournament. This is before he met his main coach that taught him how to be actually like excellent, right? So he was doing whatever kind of grappling and wrestling matches that were coming around in his area, and one didn't bar chokes, and it wasn't necessarily a catch wrestling match. It was just a tournament, right? So that's why he actually stated later, and this is in one of his books, or not his book, but it was one of Mike Chapman's books that has this quote where uh, uh, basically Frank Gotch says like, "Oh, I won a match by choke, but there's no honor in that." I don't have it exactly the way he says it, but basically he was saying like, this was before I learned the code of catch wrestling from Farmer Burns, right? And then what you see, and again, all these other, even this book, right? So we're talking about the life's work of Farmer Burns. I think I'm right on the back. I think it's the back page. Yeah, rules of wrestling. Rule 1: either opponent may press his arm against the antagonist's neck or face. So you can do like a chancery position, but rule 2: stranglehold barred. Right. So when is this when was this printed? And again, this was already after he admit. Oh, copyright 1911 by Martin Burns. Right. So again, there were several different types of grappling styles in existence around the world, but also even within the United States. So that's why I said like you'll kind of go back to different styles, um, and like we had several types of like grappling competitions all the time. So just like nowadays we have different, but now it's kind of changed where it's like you pretty much just have like jujitsu competitions, whether it's IBJJF but there's all different types of nogi and different types of like nogi companies and this and that. So it could have been a little bit different where back in those days you had a wider variety of competitions going on. And so like one of the times that when Frank Gotch and Farmer Burns actually met, I think the rules were it's like how long can you last against Farmer Burns, right? And so it wasn't necessarily like um, like we're gonna pin you or submit you or anything like that. It was like, can you last a certain time limit without getting pinned, basically? And that was the idea, without getting pinned. Um, because again, even in Farmer Burns' book, he's not talking about submission so much, but he's always talking about pinning someone. And actually, I think that was one of the lessons I was gonna talk about today. But I wanted to talk about that Aioki Nakashima match because it just happened. So I kind of bumped the whole thing that topic maybe for next week, right? Unless something else kind of happens, right? So keep that up for next week because what I want to talk about next week, or what I originally want to talk about today, was Farmer Burns' whole idea, where a lot of times the way of training and stuff like that was training people to pin others, and like so we can talk more about that later. So let's see. Let me read a couple of these. Jumpy Killer QX. Were people afraid to go to sleep back then? I'm not sure. But let me see. I would think holding leg locks too long would have been seen as dirty, especially when considering the medicine of the day. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that, but I know that choking was actually considered a sign of being a lower level wrestler, right? So because again, it doesn't take, and the way they saw it was that it wasn't like a very skilled technique to just try to choke somebody. And then we have Earl Caddock in his interview when they were asking him about how he was helping train army soldiers, and he was saying the way you can tell like who's green, right, or who's like a beginner is like they're trying to choke everybody, right? So that's that's the way it was looked at, right? So because again, the pin was really valued, right? At that time, you really wanted to throw someone over onto their back. So again, like you could guillotine choke somebody, and it was seen as like maybe you got lucky, right? So again, that's not the way people seem to see it nowadays. And those type of people seem to be screaming the loudest when they try to criticize catch wrestling. But catch wrestling, again, like the point that Sword Tune kind of brought up, and we kind of talked about it, where it's like catch wrestling is its own style, and this is the way people saw things at that time, and like this is the way all the old timers, like including Billy Robinson, Roy Wood, Billy Wicks, Dick Cardinal, that's the way they continued to view the way wrestling should be done, right? So that's why we're gonna keep real wrestling alive in that way. So we're gonna keep to the rules, like I just read you, right? Dollar Bill, what do you think of how Eric Paulson combines catch and jiu-jitsu to form CSW? Um, I would consider that kind of like its own thing. So then, yeah, I believe Eric has been a very long time jiu-jitsu practitioner. It seemed more like that. So it seemed more like jiu-jitsu to me ultimately. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. Um, all right. Any other questions? Keep on asking. You're free to ask. But yeah, so did you guys like the Aioki fight, the Aioki Nakashima fight? It really was only that one round, and it pretty much was only about those those couple minutes that I showed you earlier. It was just a little bit longer than that because, of course, they had to start separated, right? And then they got closer, right? And then Nakashima threw a couple punches, and Aoki slipped him, was able to get behind him. He got what we call sometimes you can call it like top right, or basically like a figure four leg hold around one of Nakashima's legs, and then kind of jumped onto the back. Ultimately, converted it to that body triangle. And once Nakashima was holding the wrist for a little while, but once Nakashima let go of the wrist control, it was pretty much all over because Aioki then was able to convert that to that face lock that he ended up winning with. All right. So hope you guys enjoyed that. All right. Yeah, keep on asking questions if you want. I'll still be here for a couple more minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed that fight. I don't know if anybody's going to be watching the UFC tonight. I believe what Connor's fighting tonight. Who knows? Actually, we did a study, a few videos with the judo black belt Emmanuel that is often in my videos. So we did like 4 videos about the Khabib versus Dustin Poirier match. So I don't know if any of you guys saw that. All right, you can kind of look at how I kind of view Dustin Poirier's wrestling. I don't know. Is anybody? I'd be open to hear anybody's like arguments for or against any of the fighters. Because if it be, I don't know. I mean, it seems like Connor would probably be more of a boxing or try to keep it striking, and I don't know. I think I just don't think that much of Poirier's wrestling. He had too many problems with Khabib, and it doesn't necessarily mean that Khabib isn't so great that he wouldn't give anybody problems. But there was a lot of basic defense things that Poirier wasn't doing. So then that's why I feel like it was I think he'll probably lose tonight because of a lot of these kind of grappling fundamentals, right? So then if he can outstrike Connor, then yeah, he has a better chance of winning, right? So I think that's my take on it, right? But I'm not too enthusiastic about like Poirier's chances of winning. Right? Okay, so I think maybe if no one's going to ask any more questions, then we'll just we'll go ahead and end it here, and then next week we'll go ahead and talk about more about some of the Farmer Burns things, and also too we're going to start a series, hopefully, Farmer Burns moves, because that's the other thing I see, like where people. I think there was some jujitsu memes where they were trying to make fun of catch wrestling this past week. I think I'd seen them before, or maybe someone has done something similar, but they either recirculated again this week where they're trying to show these old pictures and of moves. Like, so even some of them were Farmer Burns moves, and they're trying to say like, oh, look at this stuff doesn't work and whatever, whatnot. Right. So what they usually say, right? But I kind of wanted to start showing people that yes, they do work, but a lot of times like they're instructional, so they weren't posed in a way where it would be done realistically. They're kind of posed in a way to kind of show you what's going on underneath, like during the actual wrestling. So kind of like next week we're going to be doing a breakdown of one of those, and we're going to show the pictures from Farmer Burns instructionals. So yeah, let me know like if there's anything. So some of you guys have seen or you've mentioned some of the old books or whatever. Just let us know if there's like some move that you'd like to like know what really is going on, right? So it'd be kind of like seeing some hieroglyphs, and then and if you don't have any wrestling background, then you might not know what's going on. So that's kind of what we want to do, is kind of like show what these moves are, and show that they're realistic and they're practical. So that's coming up next week. In the meantime, you're free to become a member of this channel. We have a bunch of videos that are behind the paywall, right? So for any of the members, there are a bunch of cool stuff. You can also, if you want to learn catch wrestling, and if you're not in LA, then we have the online academy, CWA Academy, that you can go through our website to check out. Yeah, I appreciate you guys watching, and keep asking questions, and thank you for watching again. All right, so we'll see you next time.